Are we live?
We are live.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the 101st episode of the Tim and Jim Show. I am Tim Sohn with Sohn Social Media Solutions here in the woods with the bears and the turkeys and the family upstairs, et cetera, and I'm so happy to be here today with my trusty co-host who is not in the woods with the bears and the turkeys. Take it away, Jim.
Yes, and we are, look what I just did there. I did the
magic.
StreamYard magic. I was able to switch positions magically. So Jim Fuse Fusion Marketing, so excited to be here with everyone. And the person we're about to introduce is also the person that made that really cool video that we just watched. Has really helped us spruce up the Tim and Jim Show studios. Chris Stone.
Wait, is that all I get? Like one clap? I mean,
golf
clap. These are the organic sound effects. Wouldn't you prefer that over some high-techy thing? Isn't this much more?
Yeah. Yes. You know what? I'm honestly honored that you guys asked me to be a part of episode 101. How did it take so long? I guess I have to make video and graphics for you guys, and that gets me on the show. Is that how that works?
That helps. That helps.
Okay,
that's it. Keep making them, and
and
might have a chance to come on again.
Yes.
Well, you've said with the bears and the turkeys. I've seen that on multiple shows, and so what's the deal? Is there bears and turkeys all around you, or is there footage? Okay.
There is not footage. However, I have to get working on that. But there are bears. We saw one just recently. I was driving down one of our local roads here, and there was a bear, making its way across. And turkeys. You also have to stop for turkeys here in Pennsylvania. So right. It's literally true that there are bears and turkeys, and a few people as well.
And there's also the big Delaware River that I see you take a lot of pictures of, but we want to welcome Chris Stone from Cast Ahead. And one of the things, Chris and I have been fortunate. We both live in the Atlanta area. We got to meet in person before the pandemic. We'll just say
was that a thing?
That was a thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
I remember way back.
And Chris is a variety of talents. And one of the things people may not know, but Chris, you actually worked for Sony for 27 years.
I did. I was in the music business for that long before digital music ever existed. It was just a twinkle in Clive Davis's eye, and I sold things like cassettes to things called one-stops that shipped records to things called record stores, and worked with record labels and music artists who signed artists as A&R people after they would get off stage. I feel like a grandfather telling people to get off their lawn, but yeah, that was what I did for many years, and then transitioned into digital. Always had a real passion for digital music and digital in general. And so when that became a thing in the 90s, that's definitely what I jumped to, transitioned into the digital world, and then went into the mobile world when ringtones, here I am aging myself, they're unsubscribing as we speak right now, right? Transitioned into the mobile world, and when ringtones started leaking into this boat, I jumped into the streaming world and transitioned out of that into what is now Cast Ahead, which I'm working with. And, a lot of people don't understand this. They say, well, you went from the music business to live streaming and podcasting. And believe it or not, it's generally the same thing in terms of dealing with creatives and dealing with businesses like a record label that have creatives or work with creatives and marketing agencies. And when someone wants to create a podcast, they don't want to learn how to make a podcast, or if someone wants to do a show, they don't want to learn about all of the stuff that goes on the back end and what camera they use or what microphone or what hosting platform or anything like that.
Yeah, there's a lot.
They just want to do their deal. They want to show up in front of the microphone, be the talent, and then go back to the trailer, or go back to their business.
Go back to the kitchen now.
Okay. And so that they can do what they do and let the digital marketing consultant, myself, and I know Jim, you do this, and Tim, you as well, to be sort of the expert and handle that stuff for the client. So it really was a smooth transition in terms of going from the music business to this space.
And Chris, I think because you and I talk about this a lot, and I know Tim, you've been doing this as well. It's really fascinating, all the constant changes that are happening in this space, and new opportunities. Really, I think I know Tim and we talked about this before episode 100. I mean, first of all, the fact that we had no idea that 2 years ago was going to set us up to actually, I think, be better prepared for things today than we would have ever imagined. We were just like, hey, let's just have fun and interview, people smarter than us, like Chris, and hopefully some of it'll rub off and we'll do better. So we have a really interesting topic today, and that is 5 reasons why you should not do a podcast. And yes, folks, if you're at home watching us live or on replay, and if you are watching live or on replay, let us know where you're watching from. But you read that right, not do a podcast.
Are you guys like playing with my brain or something? Like, who would come to a show to find out why not to do something? I'm really confused.
I mean, because do you realize that, Tim, that Chris helped me and Christian start a podcast? So now he's telling me maybe that I should not be doing a podcast.
Pull the plug, Jim. It's over.
Let's hit delete right now.
Hit delete. I know I worked with you guys to launch that, but it's time to pull the plug, put the ship into the dock. It's over. No. I think a lot of times when I'm speaking to people about starting a podcast, everyone starts the wrong way. And most of the time, the very first question is a simple question. And I think anybody that works in digital media or whatever, or any business, they should know why they're doing something. And more times than not, the why is always because this business or this company or this entrepreneur has something that they're selling outside of a podcast. They just say, well, I know I need to do a podcast because podcasting is hot right now, or somebody told me I would be really good as a podcaster. Those are their reasons. And that actually is not a reason. You should be developing why you're actually doing the podcast in the first place, what you're trying to achieve with the podcast. And if it's just some thing like, I just feel like I want to say something to the world and have a voice, that's fine. That's a reason. But just to have a podcast is not a reason why you have a podcast. And so, usually when I'm in a conversation with someone about why, someone would talk about the fact that there are just too many podcasts. And so the first reason why you shouldn't do a podcast is that there are too many podcasts.
So this would be reason number 1. There are too many podcasts.
That's right. And for those of you who are watching, I'd love your feedback. I'd love your questions. You can argue with me if you want, but Tim and Jim are too nice. So I'm here for you.
I mean, what do you think, Tim? Do you think there are too many podcasts? I mean, I guess we could say there might be too many live streams, except for not the Tim and Jim show.
No, I really don't, because you can really make your podcast your own. Right? Like there's other live shows about marketing, about entrepreneurship, about PR, about, all those things. But we all have our own different vibes. We all have our own different stories, our own different perspectives. So I don't buy that. What do you think?
I'd like, do you know, Tim, and I know, Jim, you know the answer to this, but do you know, Tim, how many podcasts there are out there in the world today?
I don't. Do you?
I do. There's actually a website. It's called My Podcast Reviews, and it's run by just a legend in the business. His name is Daniel J. Lewis. And that number is right. There are over 1.4 million podcasts out there. That is ridiculous, right? And then the episode number is even more ridiculous, which is 34 million episodes. And you can see here when we hit the pandemic, how that raised even more quickly. A lot of people saying, "Oh, wow, this is another way for me to promote," or maybe had some extra time or whatever. Sure. So when you look at that number and you're someone who's looking at trying to develop a podcast, that can be daunting, right? You say, "Oh my God, I mean, how can I compete with 1,400,000 other podcasts, and a portion of those are about the same thing that I'm saying?" Well, what this number does not tell you is that when you scroll down here and you look at this, you can look at how many podcasts are active and how many are inactive. And this right here just shows you, if you're active, you have put up content one time in the last 3 months. That's considered active. So even if we're just looking at that, and in my opinion, if you're a podcaster and you've done one episode in the last 3 months, you're not really active. However, only 45% of those 1.4 million podcasts have done anything in the last 3 months. And if you look over here by the number of episodes in those feeds, you can see that 21% of them only have one episode. So 21% of those only have one episode. And that is, that's 304,000. So you can cut that number, 1.4, down to 644,000. And if you go like active back down to 60 days or 30 days even, you're talking about cutting that $1.4 million, $1.4 million. Yeah. Now we're going to talk about money, right? 1.4 million podcasts. You can cut it down and down and down. And now you're talking about really having an opportunity as a business owner if you're more consistent. And we talk about this on live streaming, what you guys do, and you guys stood by and did 100 and now 101 episodes. It's about staying consistent with that content and building that thing. It's the same thing with podcasting. And if you continue to do that and have the patience, you actually do have an opportunity to do something in the space. Because if you want to compare, like everybody has a website, right? So if you're not going to do a podcast, okay, well, I'm just going to focus on my website. Well, congratulations. You've now just joined a pool of 1.7 billion people who have a website. If you don't think that you have an opportunity to promote your business, to promote what you have to sell, to drive money into your funnel, whatever you're doing, your why, if you don't think you have an opportunity to do it with podcasting, you're wrong, because your website just jumped in a 1.7 billion member pool. Okay, well, what about a YouTube channel? Maybe you should focus on your YouTube channel, which you should, right? There are 32 million YouTube channels. Now, how many of those are active like this? I'd like to know. I don't know if someone tracks that. I know we talked about that earlier, but I think
maybe we should Google it.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Google has some control over what you see there.
Right.
And then, of course, a blog too. Oh, well, I'm going to focus more on my blog instead of my podcast, right? Well, there's 600 million blogs. So this is a real opportunity and for anyone. And it's if you're developing your business, and we talk about know, like, and trust, right? You want to get to that trust level with your listener and your customer. What better way to have someone know you, because you're jumping into the podcasting world and you get to go into 60 plus countries and everyone's phone. They'll eventually like you. Well, some of them will like you. Not everyone's going to like your voice. Not everyone likes my voice and your voice. It's just the way it goes. But you have a real opportunity to, I talked to a client yesterday. He got a call from someone in India.
Wow.
And that person called him and said, I wanted to just be sure that you were the same person I've been listening to on this podcast, and booked him for a speaking event. So it's just it's another thing. It's another opportunity for you to, get some SEO, get some traction, put out some content, and eventually it comes around. So there are too many podcasts, but guess what? There are not enough good podcasts, and there you have an opportunity to develop your why and turn it into a good podcast and set yourself apart from everyone else.
And I thought too, Chris, what was interesting when you look at this pie on the right, you may not see it, but 60% of podcasts have less than 10 episodes. And you have another chart that you can show us where even this 40% that has 10 or more, so there's a surprise there too.
Is there?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Jim.
Breaking news.
Wow. You really know how to run a show, man. Yeah, this show's active by inactive for those that have 10 plus episodes. So these are people that are giving up. And there's a thing that's called pod fade, which basically means people will start their podcast, and after about 6 episodes, they're done. They're done. And yeah, so one of my 5 reasons actually pertains to that. So I won't give that away. That's what we call a tease.
And Linda actually did some research for us. She said per Google, there are around 16,000 YouTube channels with over 1 million subscribers.
Okay.
Thank you, Linda.
That is not a lot out of that other really big number that you gave us.
Good
it's
opportunity.
So big I couldn't remember it, right?
And I wonder just how active those channels are, right? So, I mean, we talk about being consistent with content, right? And speaking to your viewer, your listener, your customer, and putting out content as often as you can in various ways. I wonder out of that, these stats here that show who's active, who isn't active, from a YouTube.
You're having too much fun, Jim.
Did you see that sleight of hand?
You're making me busy. All
Let's
right,
not make our viewers nauseous.
There are too many podcasts. And Linda, thank you for joining and giving us that info. We'll hire you as our analyst. So I appreciate that.
That's right.
So Tim, what do you think? Are we ready? Are you ready for him to go with the next one?
I'm ready. I'm on the edge of my seat, literally here. I'm about to fall off because I want to know why else should we not have a podcast? I'm still confused why I'm here, but what's the next one?
Well, Tim, I'm glad you asked. Reason number 2 why you should not start a podcast is you can't make any money on your podcast. You can't make any money on your podcast. And most people cannot make any money directly from their podcasts. I think generally most people think, this kind of comes from the YouTube thing. When you reach X amount of subscribers and X amount of viewing hours, you become, you can monetize your channel, right? And so you can then get ads, and then you start getting money in from that. And people generally think that that's kind of how it works with podcasting, is that you could start planning ads and selling ads for your podcasts. The truth of the matter is there's really not a lot of money in that unless you're at a very, very, very high level in podcasting. And so making money directly from the podcast is difficult. You can set up a Patreon. You can set up a paywall. If you're just starting out, you don't want to do any of that initially, because you've got to build your tribe, right? You've got to get yourself out there. You've really got to work on your content first and foremost. And so, when we, yeah, that's probably why I have no aspirations. Money is a motivator. Okay, Linda. But Linda and everyone else who's hearing this, the way for you to have your podcast make money for you is to use it as a way to drive to your products, to your offerings. If you're a motivational speaker and you don't have a podcast, how's anyone going to know what you sound like? They're going to go to your website. There's also 1.6999999 billion websites, right? So it's just another opportunity for you to get out there and to have somebody figure out who you are, to hear your voice, and eventually come back around to your website. Every podcast, you get to have show notes. You get to have, every podcast host gives you a website, and that just all of that stuff, brings you into just search engine optimization and more opportunities to say, hey, I really like this Launch Your Live podcast that Christian and Jim are doing. Not only is it helping me do my show, I want to contact these guys because they have other stuff going on. They have other things that they're selling. Jim, your business, and so that's really how you need to start, unless you're somebody that is already a massive celebrity like Tim Sohn, who can
and
just
the crowd goes wild.
Yes, who can just start a podcast and have all of this advertising. So even Joe Rogan, who obviously is the biggest podcaster in the universe, when he first started doing it, there was none of that. And when it was time for him to do a product endorsement, which, I mean, the luckiest thing MeUndies ever had was Joe Rogan really liked their underwear. And so he would just
Shout out to the underwear.
He would just get on and start talking about it, but only because he truly liked the product. And now whenever Joe Rogan says that he likes something, it just means so much more to that company, and obviously probably a lot more money to Joe Rogan. So,
well, and Tim Sohn likes Dunkin' Donuts and Dunkin' Coffee. And Dunkin', hello, where are you?
Cheers. Paging Dunkin'.
Are we going to have a Dunkin' Donuts commercial now?
We're not going to have a Dunkin' Donuts commercial, but we are going to have a StreamYard commercial. We want to thank them for sponsoring the show. Tim, you're not doing the Tim.
Oh, it's this? Here, I was doing.
Yeah, it goes like this.
Oh, okay. I got to tell you, when I was putting together your video, and I was going through all of these shows, it really is amazing how many great guests you guys have had on. I'm honored just to be, in this place. But I mean, anybody who's watching this for the first time, go back on this channel and check out. I mean, there's some really great information. I got just search engine optimization for your business, social media, video, and just really great guests that you guys have had. And I think it's a testament to you as people and having these amazing guests. I guess you met them at conferences, or
some of it was just reaching out and asking. I mean, I think that's
reach out and touch someone.
Yeah, people are. It's like don't be afraid.
Not literally.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. You can get in trouble. That's true.
That's right.
With gloves on, and a mask.
So,
right,
Chris. First of all, thank you for that. And I always have to thank Tim, because Tim invited me to join him, because Tim was live streaming before.
What was I thinking? No,
I don't know, but I'm not complaining. What's the third reason that I should not do a podcast?
Third reason why you should not do a podcast is you don't know who you're talking to.
Ooh, that sounds like what my mom would say.
I think those of us who have listened to podcasts, yeah, it really does. My mom did say that a number of times. Now that I think about that. Many of us have listened to podcasts and have listened to some really bad podcasts. And, I spoke earlier about my career in the music business and in audio and audio engineering. And I edit and produce podcasts and music, and I've done it for years. But no one, when they press play on a podcast and eventually becomes a fan and a subscriber of a podcast, when you ask them what they like about that podcast, or when they suggest it to someone else, which by the way is the best marketing you could ever have, is to have somebody tell you about a podcast they like. It still is the number one thing you could do. And so if you have your own podcast, start asking people what podcasts they listen to, and then you can tell them about your podcast. But anyway, is when you hit play on that, no one goes, you know what? I love this podcast because the sound is so great. It sounds like butter in my ears. You know, no one says that. It's not a thing.
But doesn't Chris Stone say that?
No. Well, you know, I am an anomaly, and you know that. But it's because of the content, and that person is speaking to you, right? You are being given something. And if you listen to a podcast you don't like, chances are it starts out with them just talking about themselves, right? Oh yeah, what did you do today? Oh yeah, well I hung out. Oh well, really? You don't even know these people, and they're talking about going and getting their mail from their mailbox, or they're doing, you know, all of that stuff. It's like nobody cares about you, and I think that's what you have to understand when you're developing a podcast. When you have to imagine in your head, I've got 15 seconds to tell this person what they're getting from listening to me for the next 20 minutes. And once you start there and you know who you're talking to, you know why you're doing the podcast, you're driving it for this particular business, and you know exactly who that customer is, you know exactly who that listener is supposed to be. Talk to that person, tell them what you're going to give them, and then give it to them. And that's talking to someone, not talking at someone. I mean, we talk about this all the time, Jim, about when we look at sort of somebody on Twitter, right? And if they're just a broadcast channel and they're just talking about themselves all the time, but they're not contributing anything socially, or they're not contributing anything to what, it's the same thing with podcasting. You have to give, and you have to come in with a giving mentality, heart, in order for this to turn into something for you. So you've got to know who your listener is, who your ideal listener is. You have to picture them. You have to get down to your finite niche and say, this is the person I'm going to talk to. And once you know that, then your content just rolls. Your content just comes out. Like, you know, that person needs something, you're going to deliver it to them, and you just got to talk about it.
Right. And I think there's a lot of parallels to, even though this is like 5 reasons why you should not do a podcast, I would also say, you could say, these are 5 reasons why you should not do a live stream. And I think that Tim and I both, as an example, we know we're looking to talk to small business owners, other marketers, and entrepreneurs. We're not really looking, we're not worried about trying to be everybody. Not that we're going to complain if everybody wants to watch us, but everybody is not who you're talking to. And I think you bring up a great point, because if I'm watching a live stream, even where they're kind of like just waiting to get the show started, like, is anybody going to join us live? Is anybody going to join? You're like, oh my gosh, because you got to remember, right? It's like you said, it's that first 30 seconds the people are going to say, not today. Swipe, they go somewhere else. And I guess it's the same with the podcast. They start to listen. It's like, not my style. I'm not hearing the butter in my ears, so I'm off to the races.
No amazing intro video. No, they're just like, that's it, I'm leaving.
No right. Billy Joel music, soundtrack.
I know, I'm still waiting. Chris, I was wondering, one thing that, just from a business perspective and live streaming, and I'm wondering if this correlates into podcasting as well, is lately I've been showing up for a lot of other people's live shows, and just supporting them by showing up and commenting and sharing, and that's led to referrals or working with those people.
Yes.
Is that something that you see in the podcasting world as well?
100%. Yeah. And Jim sees this as well, because he's just launched his podcast. So he has sort of a new view on the podcast community, but it really is a community. It's very supportive. And, in a lot of ways, in many other formats, digital formats and businesses, if you're doing something that's the same as someone else, you're looked at as competition. And it's not like that in most cases in the podcast world. So because my voice is different than someone else's voice, I may have some generally the same principles and some of the same general idea, and I have a podcast that is about something that may be in a similar lane as someone else, but I'm supporting all of those people. I'm a guest on their podcast. They're a guest on my podcast, which is the second biggest way to market your podcast, is to show up on someone else's podcast and then support that back. And that's a huge component of the podcast community, is that everyone supports everyone else, even if they're quote unquote competitors. So,
and I think that's very true. I mean, I think it kind of goes back to, I mean, Tim and I have been fortunate to be guests on other people's shows, either together or separately. Tim has his own show that he does periodically. About
very periodically lately,
the family First show. You keep bringing up Lately, which is a great product, by the way, Kate from Lately, who's in the video.
Shout out to Lately.
Shout out to Lately, and we've been using that to repurpose some of our videos on Twitter, especially. So we'll see if their AI catches that we talked about lately.
We love Try Lately.
Try Lately, and and we saw that Dan Jordan was asking about the whole money thing, and I think you had hit on it earlier. It is a process, and I think I love the fact that how you talked about, and I think it's even the same with what we're doing. And I think Tim, I think you and I would both agree that sometimes where we fall short is we don't tell people like, hey, we're always willing to talk to you or work with you. But we've both started to do, all three of us, remote live stream producing, because we've been doing this for a while. We understand those things that other people don't. And I Chris talked about this earlier, right? It's that whole thing of, the talent just wants to show up and look good. They don't want to have to worry about, well, what camera do I need? What microphone do I need? They just want to do that. And I know, Tim, you've definitely had been working. I mean, you're working with people in California, right?
Yeah, I'm working with a county health department, producing live streams, giving updates on COVID, among others. But yeah.
It's important. It's important to support the community that you're in the business that you're in, and that the whole rising tide ships analogy, I think is something you can look to where it's like, you guys supporting other live streamers like you're talking about, Tim. I'm glad you asked that. I'm glad you made a point to do that. You're not supporting those shows because you're expecting them necessarily to give back. You're doing that because you're getting something out of it. You're probably learning something, and you enjoy supporting that community. And that's important for live streaming. It's important for podcasts. It's important in life, for sure. Right. We're giving life lessons, ladies and gentlemen, on the Tim and Jim show. What value?
That's right.
I think we found our motto: life lessons. Fill in the blank. Life lessons. Drink Dunkin'. Watch the Tim and Jim show.
That's right.
But seriously,
Chris, so what is the fourth reason now that I don't want to have a podcast?
The fourth reason why you should not do a podcast, and this goes to Linda Ray, who's chiming in. The fourth reason is you don't have any patience. Listen, don't start a podcast and expect in 2 months that this thing is going to magically transition and transform your business into a powerhouse. It's just, it's very, very unlikely. About as unlikely as you falling out of bed and getting struck by lightning. But if you are patient and, like what we talked about earlier, and consistent with your content, and stay patient, stay consistent. And the beautiful thing about podcasting, and the beautiful thing about even live streaming, if you guys went back to your first show and pressed play, right? You're already cringing. You're just like,
we should do that.
Right?
Not right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Amy. I think the thing that you have to realize is that you just got to do it. You just got to do it. And we all, we all are fans. I believe we're all fans of Pat Flynn. And one of the things that he does on some of his webinars is he'll go back and he'll say, "Here's me on my first podcast," and it was like in 2004 or something like that. And he hits play on that thing, and it is brutal. It's brutal. It barely sounds like him. You could tell it's him, but it's like, wow, he's saying, and it just doesn't sound like he knows what he's doing, kind of. And I'm testing out this thing. I hope you He goes back and he listens to that because it inspires him. It basically, and it should inspire us to say, look how far he came from that. And so everyone, I think, not everyone, but a lot of people don't like the sound of their voice when they hear it for the first time. It's a little weird, and there's the whole imposter syndrome, and there's all of that goes on. The more you do this, the better you are at it. It's a muscle. It's like an athlete. It's like anything else that you're doing. You can't just do 10 episodes and think that you're going to be stellar. You've got to get at least 25, 30 episodes out there. And that sounds like, for some people, they go, "Are you kidding me? That sounds like so much." It's not. It really isn't. And even when you have those out, and maybe that's over the course of that many weeks, one per week or something like that, you'll start to see some of the lights come on. You'll start to get some reaction from it. You'll start to get some things going. And those podcasts, they live forever, or as long as you want to let them live out there in the interwebs. And so all that information is accessible at any one given time. Jim, your podcast, your very first episode that you guys did, that is still out there. And at some point, somebody's going to search for it and they're going to find it. And all of a sudden, they've got this, wealth of episodes and content that they can have access to. So it's really a long game, like Amy's talking about here. It's really, and YouTube channel, same thing. Things change all the time. You just got to get better at it. And you just can't let these things prevent you from turning on your mic and recording your voice and getting your podcast out. You can practice. I mean, how many of us have, when we're doing YouTube shows or a YouTube video or whatever, we'd record it and watch ourselves and practice? There's nothing wrong with that. I think it's great. Yeah. I think it's a great thing to do for podcasting as well. No one's ever going to hear it but you, and you can just get better at it. So yeah, that's it. You don't have any patience.
So that was number 4.
Yes.
I wonder what number 5 is. I'm once again on the edge of my seat. I'm almost leaping into the screen here.
Number 5 is you're not tech savvy.
Oh man.
Yep. Yeah. If you don't know anything about tech, then just don't ever podcast.
But can't you just hire someone, Chris?
I'm glad you asked. You don't. There are very simple ways. You can jump on various YouTube channels, on my YouTube channel, and there's a ton of different things that will show you affordable equipment for you to use, train you on how to do simple mic technique, put yourself in a small carpeted room, and you can record something on your phone. You can record something on the computer that you've got. There are tons of free sources that you could do. So if your budget is something that's a concern, there are very inexpensive yet effective podcasting and even live streaming tools that you can use to get you on your way. And there is just this is not a reason when someone says, "Well, I want to do a podcast, but I'm just not a tech person." They make a mic now. This mic I'm speaking into right now, you plug it right into your computer, and it makes you sound great. It was easy, and it was $50. And
is that the Samson Q2U?
Yeah, same mic you've got, yes. I see. So yeah, that's the 5 reasons why you should not podcast. So who wants to start a podcast?
I think Tim does.
Chris, what do you think about in terms of taking a live show and turning it into a podcast? Is that a good idea?
Good question.
For example, maybe the Tim and Jim Show.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think it's a good idea. I think especially, I'm going to try to move away from my audio nerd thing. I'm going to put that aside. But most people don't understand the difference between a podcast and what we're doing right now.
Yes, they'll call this a podcast.
They'll tune into this and they'll go, "Oh, I caught your podcast with Chris Stone of Cast Ahead." And you'll go, we did a show, right? Okay. So Some people, they don't understand or when you say podcast, they just don't understand exactly what that is because they've never done it, but they understand this. They understand a show. And so there's a lot of lines blurring. And if you can find a easy way to repurpose the audio from your show without it turning a listener to just the pure audio away, then I think it's a good idea. So if, say, we did a show that was very visual and I had a screen share here with the statistics, you may want to take that out before you put it on the podcast, which you can edit audio after the fact.
Because so you might do something like we moved on, we talked about this and then we moved on. And I guess you could even say, if you want to see the visuals, go check out our YouTube channel, the Tim and Jim Show, branded channel.
You could do that. And then, one is basically, a version of the other. And you could do that. My suggestion is if you've started with a podcast and you want to take that podcast and then try to port it over to a YouTube channel as the podcast, it really does not translate well because there's no visuals, right? So if there is visuals and the amount of time that it takes for you to repurpose that into another piece of content is easy, right? If you can do it relatively quickly, and there's some software that I think it's repurpose.io that does that for you. But if you can do that seamlessly and try to create some visual, I know there's audiograms, which, I mean, it's something visual, but it's not like the Tim and Jim Show visual, right? It's so I think whenever I talk to someone who has a podcast that wants to take that podcast to a YouTube channel, what we've had more success with is talking to them about creating companion episodes on the YouTube channel for the podcast. And then one can drive the other. So you've got the audio version and it's pure audio. And then you could tell someone, hey, we're on our YouTube channel. We actually show you how we're going to do X, Y, and Z. And then you're leading them to the YouTube channel. And then on the YouTube channel, you're talking about your audio podcast, and both have links to each other. And so now you're going to get your super fans of your tribe that are going to do both. And now you're luring both people on either channel to another piece of content.
Amy has a good question then. We said 5 reasons why not, but give Amy a good reason why she should start a podcast. Because, she's only done 23 live streams so far. So she can get those podcasts and get caught right up.
Amy, you've bought into my Jedi mind trick. These are not the podcasts you're looking for. I actually gave you 5 reasons why you should, because you have an opportunity. I don't know, Amy. I don't know what you do. I don't know. I'd love to.
She's a fabulous coach for helping other small businesses that need coaching, and she's taller than me, so I have to be nice because she might beat me up. But
okay, the tallest small business coach is a great podcast. You can start it, and you'll have more business in a year from that podcast than you had before you started it. How about that?
Good one.
because right now she hasn't gotten any business from a podcast because she doesn't have a podcast. But it's another opportunity, Amy, for people to hear you and what you do and what you instruct small businesses to do. And not, you don't give away everything. You don't give away all of your secrets, so to speak. You got to give something, though. And eventually more people will hear you, and you'll get more attention, more business, and you'll feel better about doing it. So.
Right. Very good. So Chris, we've got, these are I guess the best places to connect with you. Correct? I mean, what do you have a favorite channel? Or have you become like just channel crazy?
The Tim and Jim show is my favorite. For me?
Right answer.
Oh, okay.
We might bring you back.
Whatever you're most comfortable connecting with. If you're an Instagram person, I'm on Instagram. If you're on Twitter, I'm on Twitter. If you want to hit my website, you can go to castahead.net, and all of that stuff's there. LinkedIn, just Google Cast Ahead, and I'd love to connect with you, chat with you, and help you on your podcast journey.
So Tim, do you want to tell us who our guest is going to be next week?
Absolutely. Our guest next week is Diana Gladney, who I actually heard speak at the Leap Into Live Streaming Summit that Stephanie Liu and Ecamm put on in the midst of the pandemic. And she'll be talking about YouTube next week. So make sure to tune in. I'm not sure if she'll be talking about what not to do or what to do, but
but we'll be doing of value. Something. It'll be something of value regarding.
There'll be something. YouTube. So show up next week for something.
Help you get to that 1 million subscribers, since there's still a big opportunity there.
No
Chris,
pressure.
this has been great. Thank you so much for coming on, and thanks again for the graphics that you created. And for those of you out there watching, if you need help with graphics, even though Chris is a multi-talented guy, I will just tell you that.
You're too kind.
He might be willing to help you out with your graphics for a small sum. It'll be more than a Dunkin' coffee, unfortunately, but yeah. So definitely reach out to Chris if you guys want to up your game. I've been very impressed with the stuff he does. He also helps me out. We do deal casters on Amazon Live, and Chris is the one that created all those graphics as well. Because I was a Marine, I ain't that creative.
But before we go, guys, tell us a little bit about this Dealcasters Live thing.
Oh, well, since you asked.
Yeah, go.
We apparently I am an Amazon influencer. I use that tongue in cheek, but I had to apply and allowed us to go live on Amazon. And so what better way than to have a co-host? And since Dealcasters Live is really about tech gear, and we actually had Jennifer Watson on, and we were talking about tech gear for weather. She was a fabulous guest. But we wanted to make it more than just showing people stuff that they could buy on Amazon. We wanted to have a conversation. And so we've actually moved up to the next level. We're now called Amazon Insiders. And we do plan in the very near future to have Mike Alton and part of the 360 crew to talk about their new book, which just released, the Ultimate Guide to Social Media. So make sure you check that out. We'll have them on. We'll talk about the book. We'll talk about some of their favorite tech gear, because they all have their own different things. But that's been a lot of fun too. And live streaming, podcasting gives you opportunities if you're willing to realize it's a long game. And I'm just glad. I'm glad I started doing podcasting too. And Tim, that's definitely something. I think you've definitely got some niches, right? Niche quiche that I think
you're making me hungry. Is it lunchtime?
It is lunchtime.
It might go good with some coffee.
That's right. So thanks again. Thank you, Amy, and also thank you, Christelle. And is it Christelle? Also other live streamers. Maybe they'll be contacting Chris about doing a podcast.
Well, I think the other thing too, another reason for you guys to do a live streaming show, or for someone to do a podcast, look how many friends you guys have made through this.
So true.
How many, not just business contacts, not just people that were helping you in your business and their help and you're helping theirs and whatnot, like true friends that you've met socially that only because of this show. And you know, the reason why, you know, we're here and friends is because of that. So I can't think of a better reason than that. It's just, you know, just get to meet more people. And you know, not everyone you're gonna like, you know, but I mean, I'd rather meet more people and get more friends, like Diane Gladney.
Yes.
I guess I like you guys. I guess we could be friends.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. We will see you next week. Thank you, Chris, Tim. Great job as always. And just for fun, look, guys, we can do this on StreamYard.
Oh my God. You're gonna make me vomit.